Hi everyone, and welcome to this introduction to the geography of Egypt. Now, when we talk about Egypt, of course you're always talking about the Nile River, the biggest source of life. And for that reason, you see the title, The Gift to the Nile. Now, let's take a look at some of the important features of Egypt. So people began settling along the Nile River about 6,500 years ago. This is a very important thing to understand because, well, if you think in terms of Mesopotamia, which we just covered, you realize that, people started settling around the Nile at around the same time that people were settling around Mesopotamia. And as a matter of fact, Mesopotamian civilizations date back to 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. So the Nile flows through a desert in the country that we know as Egypt, of course. However, it overflows each year, and that overflow, of course, creates a very fertile agricultural area. Now we know that that's called silt, the actual dirt or soil that is deposited by the river. So, quick facts over here: the Nile River is the world's longest river. That is, as you can see over here in the image, you'd be able to see that it starts over here, and in this area over here is where you have some of the biggest lakes, Lake Victoria, as a matter of fact, right here, that are located in Africa. And here's where the Nile is born. And as it travels north, it actually covers quite a vast amount of land, mostly desert, by the way. So, yes, it flows, as I said, up to the north, and ends up in the Mediterranean Sea. So it passes through the present-day Uganda, and Ethiopia, Sudan, and of course Egypt, and then empties into the Mediterranean Sea. So the Nile River, the rainy seasons last from May until September, and heavy rainfall causes the river to rise. And of course that silt, once again, goes north. The silt is deposited where the Nile empties in the Mediterranean Sea, as we said before, and here the river divides into several branches, forming a fan-shaped delta. Now remember, deltas are always that way. And as a matter of fact, let's take a look at that delta right here. This is actually that delta. And delta is actually a whole bunch of little streams that kind of meet the Mediterranean Sea. So what is a delta? Well, it is a very fertile, flat land, piece of land, made of silt, dropped by a river as it drains into a larger body of water. Now remember, deltas are not just in Egypt. You have deltas in every major river in the world. This is just something natural. It's kind of strange, but rivers tend to fan out that way, and then they leave all this fertile land as they leave, or I should say as they drain into the ocean. So ancient Egypt is divided into Lower and Upper Egypt. We know that the northern part, and that would be this over here, as you can see by that name right there, that's called Egypt, Lower Egypt, because it actually lies downstream on the river, whereas the southern part is called Upper Egypt, because it's actually upstream. So think in terms of if you lived there. If you were there today, if you're standing over here, let's say, and as you're standing there, you actually look up the river, it would be up, right? And as you look where the river flows down the river, you would see Lower Egypt. I guess it makes sense that way when you think in terms of living there, not when you think in terms of maps. It's kind of weird when you say, the river goes north. But remember, rivers always go down because of gravity. Floods or droughts. Alright, so desert sand cannot be farmed. We know that. It's just, there's no nutrients in it. Plants can't just grow in it. It's actually, for the most part, salt and sand. So it needed the silt-filled floodwaters, which were rich in minerals needed by plants and all types of living creatures. Therefore, farmers needed and welcomed the annual floods. These were fantastic moments in the life of Egyptians. However, too much of a flood could lead to destruction of villages and, of course, one of the most important things, animals. Remember, animals were a very important part of Egyptian life. So the importance of floods. Well, Egyptians built the Nilometer, and the Nilometer, I know this is a weird word, Nilometer is a special staircase that goes into the river, but what it did is it actually allowed them to measure the river. And what was interesting about it is they measured the height of the annual floods by counting the number of steps covered by the floodwaters. This would give them a very good idea of how much water they had, or how much the floods would last for, and it allowed them to make predictions about the river. So obviously the farmers there planted wheat and barley, which is something that we already covered, was a very important crop for people in Mesopotamia as well. Lettuce, onions, beans, and to water the plants, Egyptians used irrigations just like the Mesopotamians. I think we have seen that with in our unit of the Fertile Crescent. So they also dug canals and used shadufs. That's right, shadufs. We've seen this in class, and let me just show you what a shaduf looks like. You know that the shaduf is an excellent tool for carrying water. It makes it very easy and very little work. So shadufs were big, even though they were also used in Mesopotamia. Summary. The Nile River is the center of Egyptian civilization, and it was used for farming and transportation. And ultimately, without the Nile River, it is, of course, impossible to think that there would have been a civilization in this area. That's it for our review of the geography of Egypt. I hope you found this as a good learning opportunity. Take care, everyone.